Is this Mrs. Johnson? Calvin Johnson's wife? Huh? Being called a Mrs. While I was thinking about my late husband, the police officer suddenly said this. Your husband has been rushed to the hospital after a traffic accident. What in the world is this person talking about? But my husband passed away 2 years ago? My name is Zara. I'm a 34-year-old office worker. Currently, I live with my parents and my 5-year-old son Noah. My husband Calvin passed away 2 years ago, and I've been raising my son as a single mother with my parents' support. I used to be a full-time housewife, but I'm truly grateful that I can now work as an office employee. When my husband was still alive, he worked diligently as a company employee. After having our child, I became a full-time housewife, and from then on, I took care of the household while my husband supported the family financially. We both put our child first and maintained a fairly good relationship as a couple. I thought we would continue making memories together as a happy family. Then one day, my husband received an offer for an overseas assignment. Noah is still little, but I'd really like to try this. It's for 5 years, so I'd have to go alone. Would that be okay? True, since our son had just been born, I couldn't go with him. I understand. You can leave Noah to me. Thank you. Since it's overseas, I probably won't be able to come back often, but I'll do my best. Although I felt lonely, I decided to support my husband's desire to advance in his career. After that, I spent my days with our son while keeping in frequent contact with my husband who was working abroad. I thought I might get unbearably lonely without him, but since our son was quite energetic and running around everywhere, time flew by as I was caught up in childcare. When our son was a baby, he had terrible night crying spells and would wander off somewhere if I wasn't watching. So I had to keep my attention on him constantly, which made it difficult to communicate properly with my husband. With the time difference, my husband could only call when I was putting our son to bed or during mealtimes. Therefore, we mainly communicated through email, and we would have lengthy video calls on my husband's days off. Being so wrapped up in childcare, a year passed in the blink of an eye. My husband came home once during Christmas. How's the overseas assignment? My head feels like it's going to explode with all the new things, but it's fulfilling, and I'll keep doing my best. I see. Don't push yourself too hard. Thanks. Noah has grown so much while I haven't seen him. We haven't been able to talk on the phone much lately. Children grow up so fast. Noah, it's Papa. Papa. Oh. Did he just say it, Papa? Yes. He did. For the first time. Noah's such a smart boy. Perhaps because we were excited about our reunion after so long, we made a big fuss over even small things. My husband could only stay for about 2 weeks, so we spent those days visiting both our parents' homes and had a very fulfilling time. All too soon, the day came for my husband to return overseas, and I felt incredibly lonely knowing I wouldn't see him for a while again. Our son and I saw him off at the airport, and I endured until we could meet again. At first, I felt lonely without my husband, but as I became busy with childcare again, time passed quickly. Our son learned more and more words, and along with that, he learned to walk, expanding his range of activity. This meant I had to watch him even more carefully to prevent him from wandering off somewhere. Since I was taking care of him alone, I had to protect him. I burned so many calories that I had nothing to do with post-pregnancy weight gain. In fact, I became thinner than before my pregnancy. Another year passed somehow. I thought my husband would come home for Christmas this year too, but in early December, I received this message from him: "Sorry, but work is really hectic, and I don't think I can make it home for Christmas." I was very shocked. I hadn't seen my husband for about a year since last Christmas. Also, he apparently had a sudden increase in workload, and our video calls had become much less frequent. I had been enduring because I thought we'd meet at Christmas, so learning this wouldn't happen made me feel terribly lonely. I see. But if it's work, it can't be helped. I was extremely depressed. But I told myself that my husband was working hard to support our lifestyle. Since it was Christmas anyway, I went to my parents' home and spent it with them. Both my father and mother seemed happy to spend time with their grandson. Christmas passed and the new year came, but I continued my days busy with housework and childcare. Our son had grown rapidly since turning 2, and now he runs energetically around the house. I enjoyed our time together, smiling at his growth, taking daily walks with him, and going shopping together. However, communication with my husband kept decreasing. He seemed extremely busy with work. At first, I would send emails, but when replies stopped coming, I thought he must be busy and stopped sending them so frequently to avoid being a burden. Time passed quickly again this year, and Christmas approached. We'll be able to meet this year, right? Feeling a bit anxious, I sent my husband an email. But there was no reply. When Christmas was near, I finally received an email from him, but surprisingly, he said he couldn't come home again because work was too busy. Surely this was too much work? Are you eating properly? Are you struggling alone? Even just hearing your voice would reassure me. Could we talk for just a little while? I sent such an email. But after that, I never received any more emails from my husband. With no choice, I spent another Christmas without him. I visited my parents' home and my in-laws' home this year. Even without my husband, his parents would want to see their grandson. While his parents enjoyed spending time with their grandson, they were worried about their son not returning home. We've been trying to contact him too, but we only get brief replies like "okay" or "understood," so we're worried. It seemed his parents weren't able to communicate much with him either, and they were anxious too. Then, in the midst of all this, an unbelievable event occurred. One day, I received a call from my husband's company. Please stay calm as you listen to this. We just received word from an employee at our overseas branch that your husband has passed away. What? For a moment, I couldn't understand what they were saying. What do you mean? When I asked for details, they told me that my husband had gone snorkeling with a colleague for a change of pace, but he had been so absorbed that he didn't notice a shark approaching and was eaten. His colleague had returned to the beach for a break, but my husband had said he would stay in the water to swim a bit more. The colleague saw a rescue boat moving and wondered what was happening, but when the boat headed in my husband's direction, they asked the lifeguard and learned that they had found evidence of someone being attacked by a shark. My mind went blank. My husband died? No, surely this must be a case of mistaken identity. I wanted to think that, but if his colleague who went to the beach with him said so, it must be true. I immediately reported this to my in-laws. They both turned pale and collapsed to their knees. The next day, my husband's company's supervisor came to apologize to us. However, since it was an accident during private time, the company bore no responsibility. We couldn't bring ourselves to blame the supervisor who came to apologize. After that, we held my husband's funeral. Since there was no body, we each brought meaningful items to place in the coffin. Our son had just turned 3 and didn't understand the concept of death. He started crying because he was stressed about having to stay quiet, so my mother-in-law's sister thoughtfully took him outside. For me and my in-laws, beyond the sadness of losing my husband, we were especially heartbroken that we didn't even have his body. From now on, I would have to raise our son without his father. However, because his body wasn't found, he was officially considered missing, and I couldn't receive survivor's pension. I had to hurriedly look for work. Worried about me, my parents suggested I move back home. Although it pained me to give up the apartment where I had lived with my husband, it was necessary to ensure a good educational environment for our son. I had my in-laws take my husband's belongings, and I returned to my parents' home with our son. I immediately started job hunting and applied to various positions. Perhaps because they valued my previous work experience, a small company near my parents' home hired me. Initially, it was as a contract employee, with the possibility of becoming a full-time employee depending on my performance. I was grateful just to have found work and worked very hard. Sometimes I would suddenly be overcome with grief over losing my husband and cry for no apparent reason, but I kept pushing myself forward, telling myself I had to support my son. With my parents' help, I worked hard as a single mother. Days passed, and 2 years went by since my husband's death. Work was going well, and I became a full-time employee a few months ago. The salary is better than before, and the benefits are good, which I'm truly grateful for. Somehow, I managed to achieve a stable life. Then one day, I received a call from the police. "Hello, this is the police department." The police. "Is this Mrs. Johnson? Calvin Johnson's wife?" Huh? While I was thinking about my late husband after being called Mrs., the police officer suddenly said this: "Your husband has been rushed to the hospital after a traffic accident." What? What in the world is this person talking about? "We need you to come to Central Hospital immediately." As the police officer continued speaking, I interrupted and said, "But my husband passed away 2 years ago?" Eh? My husband died overseas 2 years ago. Dot. The police officer seemed confused. But I was also troubled by such a phone call. However, when we checked the personal belongings of the person we transported, there was an emergency contact number written on their driver's license. What? Not understanding what was going on, I decided to go to the hospital anyway. The name the police officer mentioned was definitely my husband's, which meant the person who was transported had my husband's driver's license. When I arrived at the hospital, I was immediately shown to a hospital room. There, sleeping on the bed after receiving treatment, was unmistakably my husband. I couldn't believe my eyes. How could my husband, who was supposed to be dead, be here? Is this man definitely your husband? Yes. He's definitely my husband. But I heard he had died. How? I was completely confused. I didn't understand why my husband was alive or why he had lied about dying. Although I had many questions, my husband had apparently been seriously injured in a car collision and was currently resting. I would have to wait until he woke up to get answers. But for now, I should contact his parents. I called my in-laws. They were so shocked they were speechless. They said they would come to the hospital right away. However, when I returned to the hospital room after calling his parents, there was an unknown woman hugging my sleeping husband while calling out to Calvin. I froze at this sight. I quickly took a video of the scene. The woman seemed to think they were alone in the room and was talking to my sleeping husband. I came back to the country with you so we could get married. You said it had been 2 years, so surely your wife would file for divorce. You can't die before that happens, okay? I couldn't believe my ears. And then I understood everything. My husband had faked his death to be with this woman. He must have quit his job and run away with this woman, deceiving even his parents. I was filled with uncontrollable anger. Then my husband woke up. Calvin. Oh, Lola. I'm so glad you're awake. What happened to me? You were seriously injured in a car accident. I remember now. An oncoming car suddenly crashed into me, and then. I'm so glad you're safe. When I checked your phone's GPS location and saw you were at the hospital, I rushed here. I see, sorry for worrying you. My husband and the woman called Lola were having such a conversation. When Lola said she would quickly call a doctor, I hid myself. After watching the doctor check my husband's condition and leave the room, I entered. Calvin, it's been a while. As I said this while entering, my husband looked at me with shock. The woman asked him, "Who is she?" I turned to the woman and said, "Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Calvin's wife." What? The woman called Lola turned pale. Zara. It's been a while. Yes, it has. I didn't know you were a magician. After all, you came back to life after being eaten by a shark? That. My husband seemed to remember how he had made his colleague lie 2 years ago. Would you care to explain what's going on? What were you doing 2 years ago when you made your colleague lie and deceived everyone, the company, me, and your parents? Well, looking at this woman, it's easy to guess. When I said this, my husband desperately tried to cover it up. Wait. You're misunderstanding something. She's just a good friend. We met when I was busy with overseas work, and she would give me advice about work. Oh, really? I thought she was your affair partner. That's not true at all. Lola also went along with my husband's lie. They didn't know that I had taken a video earlier. It was obvious they were trying to hide their affair. Then how do you explain this? I showed them the video from earlier. It perfectly captured Lola's statements proving their affair. It's terrible that you secretly recorded this. Who's really terrible here? Involving so many people and making them sad. You need to properly understand the weight of your crimes. What you two did is far worse. When I raised my voice, my husband and his affair partner cowered. At that moment, my in-laws arrived. Calvin, what is the meaning of this? Dad, Mom. What have you been doing? My husband became even more flustered at his parents' arrival. We heard everything from Zara before we came here. What you did is despicable. Faking your death to run away with someone, what were you thinking? I'm sorry. My husband seemed to give up trying to make excuses and surrendered. He admitted to his affair with Lola. He said he had gotten his colleague to cooperate in faking his death to avoid paying settlement money. I was completely disgusted with my husband. And I didn't want to talk anymore. I left the lecturing to his parents and decided to take legal action. First, I demanded a divorce through a lawyer. Furthermore, I claimed compensation from both my husband and his affair partner. Of course, I also demanded child support from my husband. I also claimed the funeral expenses that we had needlessly incurred for him. As property division, I claimed rights to the house we had lived in and the living expenses that should have been provided for the past 2 years. My husband was also apparently sued for damages by his company for deceiving them. His current debt must be enough to make him want to die. Although his parents paid on his behalf, my claims alone amounted to over $100,000 including child support. Adding the damages from his former company, I think it's an amount he won't be able to pay back in his lifetime. His parents said they would cover the payments to me but wouldn't cover the damages to the company. So my husband will have to work desperately to pay it back. Apparently, Lola quickly dumped him when he became so deeply in debt. Well, that doesn't matter to me. Meanwhile, I continue to live at my parents' home, watching our son grow up together with them. I'm saving the settlement money and child support for our son's future education expenses, and I'm working hard at my job to protect our son's lifestyle.